And then your Halloween party will be the bestest Halloween party they go to. Although truthfully, most people, ours is the only Halloween party they go to. Because they come to our place and they start drinking, and once you started drinking, we don't let you leave until you're sober. Oh look, it's time to start the show again. I was talking about Halloween. We have a big Halloween party. You're not invited unless I already have invited you. But since no one I know watches this show, I don't think anyone watches the show. But in the off chance that I do know you and I didn't invite you to my Halloween party, hey, let me know. Although given that it usually takes me about 4 months to edit this, call me up and ask me how the party was. Also on the topic of Halloween, I've mentioned my floor director, John, before. John loves it when I talk about him on the show, even though the only time I talk about John is when I want to mock John. And it was mentioned to me that John is stingy, and I know John is stingy. I have a lot of history with this, and so it was like, yeah, at Halloween, like, he makes the kids take only one piece of candy, and I'm like, oh, that sucks. Because I remember Halloween as a child, and like, most houses only give you one piece of candy. But like every 50th house, you'd get there and they'd give you like 2 pieces of candy. You'd be the happiest kid in the world. And I was like, that's a nice idea, but if 2 pieces of candy make a child happy, how happy would like 10 pieces of candy make a child? And I live in Santa Clara, and apparently when I was a kid, you know, Halloween would come and it would get dark, and then we would go out in our poorly made, non-reflective costumes. And we would wander wherever we wanted, and the big concern was you couldn't eat any of the apples people gave you because there might be pins in them. And no one gave us apples, and I didn't really like apples, so even if you'd given me an apple full of pins, I wouldn't have eaten it. So score 1 for me. Nowadays, we get like 4 trick-or-treaters all night long, right? We turn our light on, we buy the big thing of candy, and we're like, this year for sure, okay? So I go out and I'm like, I'm going to buy candy for my house as if it's going to be a non-stop, line of kids coming to my door. But it never is. It's always like maybe 10 kids. So when they come to my door and knock or ring the doorbell or whatever, I open it up and out. I got a huge bowl of candy that, if it's still there at the end of the night, is just going to make me fat. So I just plunge my grubby little hand into that bowl and I grab as much candy as I can fit in it, and then I drop that in each little kid's bags, and their little eyes just open up like, it's Nirvana! It's the happiest place in the world! Look, it's Willy Wonka's house! Except I don't look like Willy Wonka. But right? So they're like, I make 10 children happy. And I'm assuming I make 20 parents unhappy at the same time, because I have just... And we give out comic books, too, because Loretta likes comic books, and you can get a lot of comic books in the cheap quarter boxes, and we have a lot of crappy comic books in our house, and so we just give them away, and the kids are like, we're like, hey, would you like a comic? And you got to be vaguely careful, because some comic books are inappropriate for 6-year-olds. But other than that, we're like, here's a big thing of candy, and then they turn to go, and we're like, no, wait, there's more! It's like I'm a Monty Hall. Anyway, that was Halloween. I don't know how I got on that. Welcome to Keith Explains. It's October for me. Again, for you, it's probably March. Maybe I will try to get this show edited so I can actually show it in October, and then all that valuable Halloween advice will, in fact, be a force of good in the world. I got a bunch of papers and stuff to talk about tonight, like always. Let's start with something vaguely simple. A lot of you, if there are any of you, are thinking, is this guy on TV all the time? Because I'm at like 9 shows right now. I mean, I've got the Keith Explains show, which is my show, right? I do it. I don't know why. I think it's an illness. Because every month it seems like a good idea until I've done it. And then in retrospect, it seems like a bad idea. But it's done, so you may as well edit it and put it on the show, put it on TV. And I'm on this other show, which is called John Wants Answers, but which I call, in my head, I call it John is Explained To. See, because it's me doing the explaining. And that way, I can't remember the name of it, right? So I just call it John is explained to, or John explains, or whatever, and it just really cheeses John off. That show is done live, which none of you would know because none of you watch that show either. And I guess this month I'm on another show. My acquaintance / friend Jim said, "Hey Keith, will you be on my show?" And I said, "Sure, I'd love to be on your show." And he said, "Don't you want to know what the show's about?" And I'm like, "No, I'm really an attention whore. So I would love to be on your show. Pretty much no matter what it is. Am I the guy in front of the board you throw the knives at? Or what kind of thing? Maybe I could be the before photo. I'm appropriate for a huge number of before photos." And he's like, "No, it's like this show on Fox late at night." And I'm like, "I've never seen that show. Because I don't watch Fox, and I don't watch Fox late at night. Because I used to watch Fox a lot. Like in 2000, 2001, I used to get up every morning and turn Fox News on because it made me angry. And that helped get the blood flowing, and it woke me up. And then I did that for a while, and then I realized I was angry all day. I was like, I don't need to be angry all day. It's just making me grumpy. I mean, it's angry and grumpy. So I stopped watching Fox, and then now I lounge around for hours in the morning. It takes me forever to get moving. Whereas if I started turning Fox on again, I mean, I'd probably be out of the house in like 18 minutes. And the first person would be dead in about 24 minutes because I'd be angry, right? And there's nothing I could do. I think I could get to court and use that. I mean, it's like a corollary to the Twinkie defense. It's the O'Hannity exception. I was watching Hannity, and I got really, really angry. And the judge is going to be like, "Say no more." Yeah, I've seen that guy. He's crazy. See, I call him O'Hannity, right? Because there's O'Reilly and there's Hannity. See, I made them into one person, O'Hannity. Wonder if anyone's ever done that before. Anyway, so I'm on like 3. You can't turn this station on this month without seeing me. Except, again, as I said, I don't think anyone turns the station on. But maybe as you're flipping past, you'll be like, "That guy's on again. That guy's on again. Where's Matlock?" That's... And on that topic, I guess it's a vaguely related topic. As you'll notice, I'm dressed as I usually am. This, by the way, is what I call dressing up. If I put on a shirt with buttons, I consider that as dressed up as I ever get. See, a lot of people see the show and they're like, "Keith, you're so laid back." And I'm like, "No, you see me on TV at my best, at my most attractive," right? I brush the hair to make sure it's laying vaguely flat, because during the day it just starts pointing up for no reason at all. I can stand in my bathroom in the morning, I can brush the hair smooth, and at mid-afternoon, if I decide to pop into the restroom and look at my hair, it'll be pointing in 4 directions, and 3 of them defy gravity. And I don't know what happened. I don't know what made my hair go from flat and vaguely not unattractive to mad scientist. Okay? But something happens during the day. If I had a webcam in my office, maybe I could catch it. Maybe I could catch the moment. Maybe if I'm thinking particularly hard, my hair goes, "Time to escape!" And it's off or something. But I got the hair, right? I got a person that puts crap on my face because they're like, "You're too shiny." And I'm like, no one tells me that in the rest of my life. I could be at work for a year and no one would go, "Keith, stop by and talk about the problem with the pointers and the memory. By the way, you're really shiny." No, it never happens. But on TV, they're like, "Powder, powder, 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 powder. Look, now you're not shiny." And I'm like, "I didn't think I was shiny before." "Yes, you were shiny. But I fixed it with this powder. This unattractive powder, which if I breathe in, makes the inside of my nose unhappy." I don't know how people do cocaine. Because, I get this powder in my nose, and I'm like, this is not good for me. I mean, it's just... I guess it's kind of like beer, because I remember people are like, beer tastes really ungodly bad. And I'm like, yeah, it does. I'm like, but there are people that like the taste of it. And I'm like, you get used to it. Probably what cocaine is. That should be their advertising slogan. Cocaine, colon, you get used to it. Except no one advertises that stuff because there's no... Anyway, this is, like I said, as dressed up as I get. So, good going there. I guess vaguely on that same topic. Before I move on to the real topic of tonight's show, which, if you'll notice, we're like 10 minutes in, and I've not even mentioned at all what we're going to talk about tonight. So you're at home, you're on the edge of your recliners, I'm thinking. Barca-loungers, maybe. I've always wanted to get a Barca-lounger for my house, but I'm afraid if I did, I would never leave. Because as I mentioned, I already lounge around a long time in the morning. And if I could go downstairs and get a cup of coffee and then sit back in my Barca-lounger, I'd pretty much just have to work at home. And then my boss would go, Keith, when you work at home, you don't really work. And I'm like, yeah, I know. There's so much other stuff to do in my house that keeps calling to me. And I have to go there. Okay, topic 1, Inception. Look, I did the whole page. See, I didn't even get to that page. Topic 1, Inception. Someone mentioned it had been a while since I talked about a movie on the old TV show, and that's true, because it's been a while since I saw a movie, at least in a theater. And then we were like, what should we do? It's nighttime, and we don't have a meeting to go to. Let's go see a movie. And so we went and saw this movie called Inception, which has Leonardo DiCaprio in it, and some other people who I don't remember. Because I'm terrible with names. I'm lucky I can remember the Leonardo DiCaprio. Or Leo. See, now I'm filled with doubt, because I'm like, what if he's not in that? What if it's Brad Pitt? Because I always get those two guys confused. It's like Leonardo DiCaprio, Brad Pitt, and then finally, Brad Pitt grew a big Grizzly Adams beard. And then suddenly in my mind, the two separated into separate people. Because Leo didn't have a big grizzly beard, and Brad Pitt had the big Grizzly Adams beard. And I was like, great, now they've become separate people at long last. And then later, I saw a picture of Leonardo DiCaprio, and he had a beard. It wasn't a big Grizzly Adams beard, it was like a goatee and a beard down here, and I was like, uh-oh. If he lets that grow any longer, I'm not going to know him apart from Brad Pitt anymore. And then Brad Pitt shaved, so now I'm screwed again, I guess. Anyway, it's got him in it. It's this freaky-ass movie. We went and saw it because of the trailers on TV, where they are like in a dream world, and things are folding up and around and all swoopy, and I love movies like that. Because it's like, kind of like The Matrix, which I saw the trailer for The Matrix, and I'm like, man, that's cool. Like, look, she's there, and then the camera swoops around, and then she kicks somebody, and I'm like, I got to go see that. So I went and saw The Matrix on opening night, because I'm that kind of geek, and it was midnight. And then at like 2 in the morning, I'm like, that was a great movie. And then there were 2 sequels that sucked. But I, as you'll notice, waited about 2 months to see Inception. So apparently now I'm old, because I didn't go out and see it immediately. But we went inside. It's this movie about dreams and everything, and kind of you watch the movie and you're never quite sure whether they're in a dream or not, because that's the premise. They're like, we got this box that lets you go into other people's dreams and screw with their heads. And I'm like, that would be great, because you could really screw with someone's head in a dream, because I don't have anyone in my head at all, and my dreams already screw with my head a lot, right? If there was a guy in there trying to do it on purpose, I think I would be terrified to get anywhere near my bed. But somehow in this movie, no, everyone's perfectly happy with it. And they're like, they're like, we're going to go into your dream, and we're going to make you think things, or we're going to find out secret information. And then in your dream, we're going to make you dream something, and then we'll go into that dream. And I'm like, uh-oh. Because when I dream, I don't dream about dreaming. I occasionally dream about falling. I have a lot of dreams about going to first grade in my underwear. Doesn't everyone, is my question. I mean, I assume this is a common going to school in your underwear and not realizing it until the teacher calls on you. at the test you're unprepared for in first grade, which never happens, I guess. That must just be me. Yeah, that's just me. So there's this movie, they're like, well, we're trying to confuse people, so we're going to go into their dreams, and then in their dreams, we're going to have them fall asleep, and then we're going to go into that dream, and then in that dream, we're going to have them go to sleep again, and then we'll go into that dream. And I'm like, this is very, very complicated. I'm having a lot of trouble following this movie. And they're like, well, it's great, because if you're in a dream and you're dreaming, time slows down. So like, if you're in a dream for like 4 hours, but then in that dream you go into a dream, you can be in that dream for like a week. And I'm like, dreaming for a week? I mean, that seems like it would get boring after a while. I mean, sure, everyone loves flying around, but a week of flying around? I mean, no. Dreams should be short enough to be savored and short enough to be easily forgotten, roughly around the time the toast pops up in the morning. Because that's usually about when they're gone. Like, if I remember my dreams at all, they're gone by the time the coffee has hit the bottom of the cup and the toast that has popped up out of the toaster to get a little something in the morning. Because I got to do something in the morning because I don't watch Fox News anymore. So you got it. So I was thinking about this movie, and the whole movie is a mind game, right? Like, you get to the end of the movie. I hope I'm not giving anything away here, but I'm going to give stuff away because no one watches this show. And I'm not a movie critic. I haven't signed I'm not going to give stuff away clauses in any contract. You get to the end of the movie and you're like, well, we don't know if he was ever actually in any dreams or not. Maybe he was just freaking crazy. Or maybe the whole show was like... There have been other things like this. And I was thinking, like, there's like Total Recall, right? Had Arnold Schwarzenegger, and you're like, he's on Earth, and then they poke at his brain, and then he discovers he's a secret agent, and he has to go to Mars, and then he's part of the Martian Rebellion, and then eventually they turn on the magic machine, and then Mars gets an atmosphere, and everyone lives there okay. And then you're like, well, that's one explanation. But the other explanation is that scene like 6 minutes into the movie when he went in to get his brain scanned. They just implanted this whole memory for him, and he's still a schmuck on Earth. I'm like, yeah, at the end of Total Recall, that's more likely. Because otherwise, a whole bunch of really wiggy crap happened that didn't make a lot of sense. I'm going to stop talking about that because it's boring. Here we go. Building a workbench. Some of you know that in addition to living with Loretta, my sister-in-law lives with me. Although I'm not married to Loretta, I call her my sister-in-law because otherwise it's too complicated. I'm like, well, Loretta's sister lives with us. And they're like, who's Loretta? And then I'm like, well, Loretta's my girlfriend. And they're like, Loretta's sister lives with you. Why don't you say you live with Loretta and her sister? And I'm like, well, it's my house. And they, see, it's too complicated, see? So I have invented this legally false fiction. I just say our sister-in-law lives with us. And we have a house. And a while ago, she was like, I need some space in this house to do my stuff. Because all the spaces in this house are full of your crap. And it's true. Okay? I bought a house because when I lived in my apartment, I had too much crap for the size apartment I had. And then I bought a house, and then it was great for a while. Because I had all this space in the house, because I didn't have a lot more crap than in the apartment. But in the 15 years since then, I have accumulated a lot more crap. So now my house is full, and she's like, I need a space to do stuff, and everything in here is full of your crap. But I'm like, I'm sorry. What if we build a workbench in the garage? You know, out in the garage where my workbench is. Except my workbench isn't a workbench. It's a pile, right? It's a huge accumulative pile of all the stuff I own that I haven't had time to put away or find spaces for. Like, I don't think I've seen the surface of my workbench in 5 years. And every once in a while, I get on my little to-do list, and it says clean off workbench. And then I see that come up, and then I laugh to myself. As if that could ever happen. And then I go out and I try to make a stab at it. Like every once in a while, I will put something on my workbench, and it will reach critical mass, and like a whole bunch of stuff will slide off. And then I'll be like, well, this is just crazy. And then I will clean like the top layer, right? And maybe I'll clean the second layer, right? Enough to kind of beat the pile down some. But I never actually make it all the way down to the bottom, where these days I assume oil is being formed. Anyway, so it's like, we should get you a workbench. And she's like, okay, that sounds like a great idea. And then we're like, well, and then she looked around. She's like, we could buy a workbench. And like Amazon Workbench, every workbench. And she's like, well, I don't terribly like any of those. And they're kind of pricey. And we went out and looked at workbenches. And they're like, $300 for a crappy metal workbench. And we were like, well, we could build something. Because like up in my computer room a long time ago, I built desks. Because as you can guess, I have a lot of computer crap. So I wanted something sturdy and big. So I went out and bought doors, big solid core doors, right? And I stacked them on top of file cabinets. So I've got like 25 linear feet of open desk space. And I say open desk space. It's not open, right? It's covered with crap. It's piled high. It's kind of like the workbench, except more electrical, because a lot of it's actually plugged in and humming, as opposed to on the workbench. So she's like, well, so I'm like, well, we could just build you a workbench. She's like, okay, I want something like this high. And like we measured, like, kitchen counter height and blah, blah, blah. And we're like, well, we want it to be kind of sturdy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we mentally formulated a plan. We're like, we'll get some posts for the legs. We'll get some of the metal brackety thingies. We'll saw, screw, drill, bolt, done. So we go out and we buy like, a solid core door, 1 3/4 piece of wood, real wood. Then we got like 4x4s for the legs. And we're like, is this going to be sturdy enough? And I'm like, well, technically my house is held up with 2x4s, right? Which are like 1.5 inches, right? And they just go all the way up. Okay, these are twice as big and twice, like, you could hold cars up with these without really even, wouldn't even bother the 4x4s, right? We got 4 of them, right? We could support half the weight of this house with 4x4s maybe. And all we're going to put on top of it is a door, and then maybe like some glue sticks and some bricks, right? And maybe some metal things, like maybe like a kiln or something, right? Like, yeah, we have amazingly over-engineered this workbench, right? Okay? If there's an earthquake in my house, the safest place to be is gonna be under this workbench, okay? Because my entire house could collapse. And the firemen would come by with those dogs. The dogs would be like, and they'd be like, we smell a big pile with the crap. Oh wait, near the pile there are people. And then they dig in, and then there'd be 3 of us living under this workbench. Because also out in the garage we have the earthquake food, right? So all we'd have to do is get like 6 feet over. We could get the pile of earthquake food. We could get it there. We got water. We got the bench, right? I don't know what we do for TV, but maybe our iPhones would work for a while. I should get a hand crank for the iPhone so we can watch TV when we're living under the workbench after the earthquake / apocalypse. Building a workbench. Wine tasting in Napa. We went wine tasting in Napa recently because we got a note from California and said it's your turn to go wine tasting in Napa. And it's like jury duty. A lot of people don't know that. But if you register to vote every couple of years, you'll get hey, it's your turn for wine tasting thing. And so we do it. We go up, we got a little cards punched. We go to a lot of wineries. We're like, here's $20. Please give me $3 worth of wine. I prefer to think of it as like 70 cents worth of old grape juice. And I was actually the driver, so most of the time I'd be like, yeah, I'm not drinking. And they're like, oh, how sad. Like, well, I'm up $20. I mean, and then people would give me wine. They're like, here's a little wine. I'd be like, great, I'm breaking the law. I don't quite understand wine tasting in Napa. Everyone I was with loves it. And so I was like, yeah, okay, I'll drive you there. It's sure, look, castle, look, grapes. Very nice, very nice. Bottles, ooh, bottles. And then they talk about how they're like, yeah, we mix this and that. And I'm like, haven't you ever heard of, like, test tubes? You know, couldn't we just automate this whole thing to where, you know, we just, here's what we want the wine. They're like, no, we got to mix the wine very carefully. And I'm like, how do you do that? Okay, I'll mention this very briefly. As I said earlier in the show, it's October. And what October means to me is I got to get my damn taxes done. Because, see, I used to have to actually get them done on time because I had an accountant, and the accountant would be like, yeah, well, April 15th. And then, like, we'd work to get them done, and every time he'd be like, yeah, they're not going to quite be done by April 15th. We'll file an extension. And then we'd file an extension, and then he would get them done in, like, end of April. And then, like, in May, I'd mail them in. And then a couple years ago, I realized my accountant was kind of an idiot. Or at least not the best accountant in the world, because I kept pointing errors out to him. And if I can figure out what's wrong on my taxes, he's not the best accountant in the world. And so then it occurred to me, well, why am I paying this guy if I got to look at these every time and then tell him what's wrong and fix it? So then I was like, well, I'll just buy the frickin' tax program and I'll do my own taxes. Which I did back in March. And then I did my own taxes. Now I'm never going to send them in before the 15th of April because I always owe money. And while I diligently think we should all pay our taxes, I feel no compunction to get the money in a day before it's due. So kind of April, I figured out roughly how much money I owe. And I'm like, well, I'll mail that in. But I guess I'll file an extension because I'm not quite ready to send them in. And then there's no reason to do them ever again, right? Until they're absolutely due, which is now. So I got to do that. Look, I won't even get to the rest of this stuff. It's been lovely talking to y'all this month. If you're there at all, see you in a month. See, I didn't get to painting our complex. I was going to talk about that. So, right, we're painting our complex different colors because I'm HOA president and I'm in charge of this kind of stuff. What? On TV. That doesn't make a darn bit of sense. Who will tell you that? On TV. I'm the only thing on TV right now. Okay. If you're out there in TV land, and if you're actually seeing me now, I'm going to say it's October 7th, it's about 9:30. Call the station and tell them something's wrong. I can't leave here, because if I really am live on TV